Lakeland Currents, your public affairs program for North Central Minnesota. Production funding for Lakeland Currents is made possible by Bemidji Regional Airport, serving the region with daily flights to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. More information available at bemidjiairport.org. Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is sponsored by Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Online at nisswatax.com.
Hi, I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. Thanks for joining us again, and thanks for your continued support of Lakeland Public TV. Friends, there's a perception that living in rural America means you don't have access to many of the artistic and cultural amenities that we often find in large cities. Well, that certainly is not the case in the Brainerd Lakes area, thanks to my next guest. It's an honor to introduce Scott Lykins, the founding director of the Lakes Area Music Fest, a concert series that takes place each and every year that brings the world's finest musicians, conductors, dancers, and opera singers to the Brainerd Lakes area to perform. Scott is a Brainerd native. He is a graduate of the prestigious Eastman School of Music, where he has a master's degree in cello performance, and he has been doing this work here in our community for nearly 10 years now. Scott, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, first and foremost, before we talk about the 2020 season, I'm really eager to learn a little bit more about your origin story, as well as, of course, the story behind the Lakes Area Music Fest. So can you tell me a little bit about the intersection between your personal journey and how the Lakes Area Music Festival started?
Definitely. So I grew up here in the Brainerd Lakes area on Gull Lake, and I started playing cello in the middle school public school system here in Brainerd, and was a musician from a young age. Started playing cello through the school system, and then really loved it and excelled at it. And by the time I got to high school, I knew that what I wanted to do was go into a career in music. And the strong music programs here in Brainerd helped me along that journey. And I ended up, as you mentioned, out at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. Now, along the way, starting, I think, when I was 16, I was a waiter at Lost Lake Lodge here in town. Obviously, the hospitality industry is a great way for youth in our area to get their first jobs. And I ended up waiting tables there for many years. And so in the summer of 2009, I was just finishing my undergrad at Eastman, and I invited a few friends here to the area to wait tables, make some money, and spend time on the lake, and to do some music. And so that summer, while fairly informal, and while we didn't really realize what we were starting, that was the birth of the Lakes Area Music Festival. And now, ever since then, it's been my full-time job to keep the organization running and plan season after season leading up to this summer, which will be our 12th annual season.
Well, tell us just a little bit about what the festival does exactly. So each and every year you bring performers from around the world. So tell us a little bit more about some of the artists that you've invited to the region and when the festival is held, for example. Give us some of the nuts and bolts about the festival.
Sure. So our largest program and the time of year that most of our audience thinks of us and engages with our activities is during our our summer festival, which happens every August for about 3 or 4 weeks. And each summer we bring about 200 artists from the top orchestras, opera companies, and ballet companies worldwide. We bring all of them right here to central Minnesota. And over 3 weeks, they perform anything from small ensembles, string quartets or chamber music, up to full symphony. And then we every year also do an opera and a ballet. And during the summer also, in addition to that, we have lots of educational opportunities for audiences of all ages. We do a kids camp for elementary school kids to learn about music. We do a lot of lectures and different ways for adult audiences to connect. So that kind of builds the framework of a very busy and fun-filled and music-filled time during August. And while that's the focus, we also have year-round programs. So we have concerts throughout the year. We have youth education programs during the school year, which serve about 2,500 public school students every year. We have concerts throughout the state in July leading up to our series. So every year we've kind of grown a little bit and added new programs and tried to come up with great ways for us to connect with everyone in our community.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the specific performers that you've brought to the region? I'm sure you're very proud of everyone that you've invited, but as an individual musician, who's someone that you were really excited to have actually at the festival?
Yeah, so there's a number of them. One that made me very proud was in 2017, I was able to bring my high school cello teacher, who at that time played in the Minnesota Orchestra. Now he's the principal of the Toronto Symphony, and he was able to join us as a featured soloist. So personally, he was one of the artists I was really proud to bring and excited to bring out. But we've had winners of the prestigious Tchaikovsky competition. We've had prize winners of the Van Cliburn piano competition. A lot of these big name festivals and organizations and competitions we've had people come from. And when we got started, we really benefited from the fact that we have truly world-class organizations here in Minnesota with the Minnesota Orchestra and the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and Minnesota Opera. And so early on, we drew a lot of players from those organizations. Now we have people coming from all over the country and the world. So some of the biggest orchestras, the San Francisco Symphony, New York Philharmonic, Dallas Symphony, Cleveland Orchestra, and especially this year with the season we had intended on having, we had our principal singers had been coming off of successful debut seasons at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, which was kind of the main opera organization in the country. So over the years, we've developed our roster, and we have a lot of musicians who come back year after year because they really believe in what we're doing and the special sense of community that we've built between our artists and our local community.
Absolutely. Well, for those of us that live here, we're very fortunate that you're doing your work here, but I'm curious, is this unique? Are there other more rural communities that have a festival of this nature, or is this unique in the nation?
We are a very unique festival in that we kind of do everything during our season. We do chamber music, and there's lots of summer chamber music festivals. We bring professionals from orchestras around the country and around the world to form an orchestra each season, and there's several other orchestra festivals like that around the country that take place during the summer. But the fact that we also produce an original opera every summer and we produce an original ballet every summer. Most festivals would be focusing on one or two of those, but we're doing all of those on our season and then also have robust education and outreach programs on top. So in that case, we are kind of still up and coming, leading into our 12th year, while there's many festivals who have been around for decades. But I think we've been ambitious and careful in our planning so that we could become kind of the next best thing in the Midwest and in the country, drawing people to our music.
Well, I'm hearing you say that this is, in fact, quite unique in the nation, so that's remarkable. It's obviously not inexpensive to bring the world's finest musicians here to the Brainerd Lakes area. So who's paying for this?
Well, that's a great question, and ties into one of our core values of an organization. When we started doing concerts in 2009, we didn't charge tickets. We didn't have a set admission fee. And at that point, it was kind of because we were college students. We didn't really understand the value of what we were doing. And we were doing it, I think, for ourselves just as much as we were doing it for our community. And so instead of charging tickets, we took donations in hope that some people who came would like it and support it. And when we realized to what extent that audience did love it and support it and really treat it as their own, that same sense of accessibility has continued on. So over the past decade, we've continued to offer our concerts without charge. And a lot of arts organizations, that's a major stream of revenue, is selling tickets. You know, you're putting a product out there, you're charging for it, and that's how you operate. Instead, we rely on individuals and people that come into our concerts to donate as they're able. And for some people, that's maybe just $1 or $2. But for others in our community, a more substantial gift is something that they're able to do and something that a lot of our donors want to do because we're making it so accessible and making it open to everyone in our community. So a lot of our budget and making this possible is through individual gifts of generous donors. And then we also have grant support through the legacy funding through the state, which Minnesota voters voted on about a decade ago, and has been a really important thing for the cultural landscape of our state.
The fact that there's no cover charge is yet another remarkable aspect of the festival because, as you said, it makes classical music and dance so much more accessible. I want to talk about your philosophy, if you will, of accessibility because I think it's quite interesting and unique. But first, I want to ask about a term that I saw on your website, radical hospitality. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so radical hospitality, we aren't the only organization to use that term, and especially arts organizations. Lots of times that is kind of serves as a euphemism for having concerts that are free or donation based. We like to read more into that statement and really have hospitality at the forefront of all of our planning, whether that's making sure we have the best hospitality for our artists who are coming into town and are staying with host families and really getting ingrained in the fabric of our community. But we also want to be especially hospitable to anyone coming into our auditorium, whether it be socioeconomic diversity or, we have a lot of people in our audience who don't attend classical music concerts or had never seen an opera before we did one. But they're coming in and sitting alongside people who are season ticket holders at major organizations. So we're welcoming all of those people in kind of where they're at. We're providing opportunities for them to learn and really engage with and understand the music that we're doing. And I think generally outside the walls of our community, we're bringing our musicians out to do concerts at the Mid-Minnesota Women's Center, at the Crow Wing County Jail. We're going to senior living communities, the public libraries. And so really trying to meet people where they're at and provide that same sense of community and hospitality, regardless of where you are in the LAMF community.
So tell me more about that. That's really interesting. So you're actually bringing these concerts not only to the auditorium, but also potentially to the jail, as you said, or to the Mid-Minnesota Women's Shelter. I'd like to hear a story of impact. Can you tell me someone who was profoundly impacted, either through one of your conventional concerts, if you will, in the summer, or through some of these outreach events? Whose lives have been changed as a result of the festival?
Sure. So I think one of my favorite programs that we do, that we've done for a few summers now, is out at the Women's Center. And through this activity, it's one of our smallest projects that we do, but we invite people who are there, who are victims of domestic abuse, to participate in a morning-long workshop. And that begins with working with a creative writing instructor who helps them put down kind of any of their feelings or their story or let out into poetry on paper. And then each of those participants then works one-on-one with our festival artists to turn their words into a song. And I think that's a unique program. It's a very therapeutic and healing one. And last year at one of our concerts, one of the participants spoke about how meaningful that activity was for her and how she participated 2 summers, and seeing the difference in the song that she created the first year and the difference in attitude and perspective that she understood about herself the second year was very meaningful. And I think that's really meaningful for the participants. But something that we don't always think about is how impactful that is for our artists.
Mm.
Our artists have come here to play in the orchestra for an opera and hopefully spend some time on the lake and socializing with colleagues they maybe only see once a year when they come here. But to have that kind of meaningful activity to participate in and realize that they've been spending their whole life working on their craft and studying music. And when that can touch someone's life so personally, that's something very unique compared to sitting in an orchestra.
That's incredible. I was going to ask you about that specifically. I'm interested in learning more about the performers' reactions, not only to your festival, but also to the region. So if in fact you're bringing people from throughout the world, I'm really curious to learn more about how they react to the region, to the community, to the festival. What are their takeaways when they go back home to their, to their hometowns?
Yeah. So about 70 to 80% of our roster returns every year, which is a great sign because it means they're enjoying themselves and having fun in our communities. And because of that, also, they're bringing that excitement and that knowledge and experience that they've had here to talk about our organization and Brainerd, Minnesota. And so in recent years, when I contact musicians from the New York Philharmonic or the Metropolitan Opera, lots of times they know of the Lakes Area Music Festival because they've heard about it for the great reputation that we have. To your question, though, I think what's really interesting is each year at the end of the season, we do a survey of our audience, we do a survey of our musicians and other stakeholders to learn how we can continue to get better and make this a place that everyone wants to go. And I'm always surprised at the fact that when musicians respond, they aren't necessarily coming here because of getting paid or because of the prestige of participating. Of course, they appreciate the very high level of artistry that goes on here at the Lakes Area Music Festival. But the kinds of things that they report wanting to come back for is the special connection with the community that they don't see other places. It's the camaraderie that they have with each other, and those kinds of aspects of the festival that bring them back. And so by coming up with programs that serve everyone in our community, by being very mindful of making this a place that musicians want to be, we're able to build that reputation, keep a high level of artistry, but also have great people coming to sit on our stage and engage with our programs.
Was there anything that stands out, reactions? I mean, I understand now that a lot of the folks that participate return each and every year, but nonetheless, is there something that stands out in your mind as a really interesting reaction to the region and to the festival? Of course, there's the artistic prestige, as you say, but just in terms of the Lakes area, what are some reactions to the region?
Yeah, I think kind of tying into the what I said earlier about people in any major orchestra lots of times know about us. I guess what makes that personal for me is this is my hometown where I grew up here. I come back every year, and when I was starting to play the cello in 6th grade, I didn't have people from the New York Philharmonic who wanted to come to Brainerd every year. And so thinking of the impact that drawing those types of artists to this community have on the youth that are here, on the adult audiences who maybe when they move to the Lakes area feel like they're giving up some aspect of their cultural lives in a more metropolitan area. And that this can be such a positive view of the Brainerd Lakes area worldwide. And yeah, it makes me proud to be a part of that alongside all of our volunteers and all of our musicians who work year after year to continue to improve that experience.
Well, let's talk about the 2020 season. In preparation for our conversation, of course, I was reading your original 2020 season announcement, and as you say, it's a grand repertoire. But just yesterday, I got my hands on an email which notified your community that the festival is going digital this year on account
Yes.
of COVID-19. So I'm excited to hear what the 2020 season holds in store for us. Can you tell us how
Yeah.
you're going to hold the festival in this new digital format?
Sure. So obviously, life right now for everyone on a global scale has changed drastically. And arts organizations and our musicians are groups of people that are especially impacted. In fact, the Minnesota Council for Nonprofits has listed the arts as the nonprofit industry hit hardest by the pandemic. And during this time, there's so many aspects of uncertainty, but also of a lack of safety. So having a whole orchestra sitting on stage just a few feet from each other is impossible right now. In the audience, it's impossible to have large gatherings and maintain the safety of everyone involved. And like all organizations, the safety and preserving those protocols and ways that we can ensure the safety of our community and our artists is the most important thing that we can do.
Absolutely.
Right now, though, we benefit from the fact that we're still a few months away.
Sure.
And so over the last 10 weeks, we've been able to go back to the drawing board and think, well, we can't do the season that we were planning to with 200 artists coming and staying in host families.
Right.
But what could we do? And how can we remain as flexible as possible to be able to still engage with our audience, still engage our artists, and present some sort of festival, even if it's in a different way. And the most reliable way of doing that right now is by streaming performances. And so that's what we've decided to do. And we will continue on with a slightly shortened season, 2 weeks instead of 3, running July 31st through August 16th. During that time, we'll be looking at new ways of providing education. We'll be moving our education programs likely to distance learning activities that youth and families can do from home. So lots of fun activities with that. We're also looking at additional lectures and Q&As and musician spotlights that we can put out there for our audience to engage with. And our hope is that this season, even though we're not meeting in person, we'll be able to expand our audience drastically just because everything is online rather than having to have our audience right here in Brainerd. And so we've developed a partnership with Minnesota Public Radio. They'll be co-hosting all 11 performances that we do this August. And we're looking at other ways of getting broadcast, whether it be audio or video, of concerts out to our audiences. And in order to do that, we'll have a much smaller team of our principal artists who will be playing chamber music, likely social distanced across the stage. And we're definitely looking to other arts organizations internationally about any and all ways that we can keep our artists safe as they're doing these collaborations.
So in this truncated season, will you still have a dance component?
We are still planning to have dance. We're looking at ways that dancers would maybe be performing to a recorded performance that one of our artists makes. So still all LAMF produced, while not necessarily everyone being in the same place at the same time. And we'll be working with our choreographer as he figures out how to rehearse and perform dance that can stay safe. And so I would say right now, day to day, a lot of things are changing as we develop some of those protocols and see how things are changing on the national scale. But right now, our intention is to still have dance, still have some kind of operatic element, and try to kind of reflect what we do with the festival every year.
Well, Scott, I'm very much looking forward to the 2020 season. We only have a minute left here.
Mm-hmm.
How can people get involved? For those viewers who want to support the festival, they want to support your work, they want to support the world-class artists that you bring to the community, where can they visit to support you, and where can they learn more about the content for this year's 2020 season?
Sure. So the number one thing I would ask people to do is go onto our website, lakesareamusic.org, and right there on the home page, you can join our email list. And over the coming weeks and months, we'll be announcing all of our programs through that email list, as well as on our website. But when you join the email list, you'll get 1 or 2 emails a week with updates of what's going on, and that way you'll be able to connect with all of the different activities that we come up with this summer.
Well, Scott, I'm delighted to hear that we can still look forward to the 2020 season. I'm delighted that you've adapted and you're nimble to create an opportunity for us all to enjoy the festival this year. It's been a pleasure visiting with you, and I'm so thankful for the work that you do here in our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Today, Scott.
Yeah, thank you. We'll look forward to having you all join us in August.
Sounds great. And thank all of you for joining us again. I'm Jason Edens, your host of Lakeland Currents. We look forward to seeing you again next time. Be kind, stay safe.